What is up, Cabbage Crew? It is Matt and John. Just watched episode 3 of the Avatar Netflix series, Omashu. And we'll go ahead and do a little breakdown, go scene by scene of our thoughts, give you guys a final grade out of 5. So this episode started off with a little Azula action, I guess you could say. I wanted to see her do something else besides that, what she did. But there was I guess you could say, a revolt or something. Sneak attack on the Fire Lord, and Azula essentially tricks them into giving themselves up, and it's just the reveal of Azula. I didn't really like how that all played out. I did think the Fire Lord burning that guy alive was pretty awesome. But besides that, how did you feel about that whole maybe 5-minute sequence of the Azula reveal?
I liked it initially because it had the OG Fire Nation music when she was a spy with the Resistance, Fire Nation Resistance, and then like you can just like tell if you're the audience that it was Azula. So yeah, Azula being a spy with the Fire Nation Resistance, like it reminded me of her being the Kyoshi warrior and Ba Sing Se a little bit. Just her being in disguise, and having her own I guess her own
Mission.
Yeah, like her own mission on having Fire Nation take control over whatever it may be. This time it was just like putting down resistance, and the anime was with just taking over Ba Sing Se and how to gain control that way. So I originally liked it, and when you get to the Fire Lord's war room, I love the fire immediately exploding. I did really appreciated that that scene there, and I would say that the whole monologue with the Resistance was good because it was a new approach to Avatar in the Avatar world. Like the anime never hinted at a resistance within their own nation, and so and so I thought that was a unique approach, something new that I actually appreciated. But I didn't think I agree with you that Azula wasn't good at her acting.
I didn't mind that. I just didn't like how I didn't mind it. To be honest, I didn't mind Azula. She was in 2 or 3 scenes. I don't really mind that actress. She hasn't done anything but for me to be like, oh, she's not. I mean, she's kind of seems like she's kind of that like arrogant, I'd say bitchy, but kind of that like stuck up thing that like her friends are almost, they respect her, but they're almost afraid of her.
Yeah.
I will say that whole like just talking about Azula and her friends first, I just feel like the approach they're taking of Azula is very much like different than the show. Like almost like she's trying to gain her father's respect, and even when he's like to Azula something along the lines of like, Zuko did the impossible.
Right.
And it's like the father, I just feel like from the anime, the father always looked at his daughter as a prodigy and someone that he, like, again, not respected, but like someone that he looked at as like his second half, his number 2, and he looked at Zuko as like the shadow of that. And this, it almost looks like the daughter's trying to gain the respect of the father just as much as Zuko is. Only difference is Zuko's banished. Which you kind of get hints towards the end of the show too. Of the anime, you get hints towards that when she starts cracking. But I just, there was something about it that seemed off to me, that like it's almost like Azula felt like she wasn't getting the love as well as Zuko. Zuko feels that, but
Right.
it almost felt like she was not getting that as well, but she was just at home. So I don't. Again, we still have a lot going on with Azula.
Oh yeah.
This is just the introduction to her, but I wasn't too on board with. Again, the actress was fine. Like the actress, I felt like she did what she needed to do.
Right.
She wasn't anything bad.
I just didn't like her acting.
Really?
Because it just wasn't, you didn't get the sense of just the coldness that Azula is. And I think you need that in her character. I don't know if it will show up later. It might. But this episode was not a good portrayal so far for me. I did not like how, well, I'll backtrack a little bit. It was cool to see Ozai just incinerate the resistance, but like as in gee, like, oh my god, like that's that's messed up and powerful. But I just didn't like how he didn't just snap. It looked like he just snapped his fingers and the incineration started. So in my mind, I'm thinking, like Aang's gonna die. Like he is
it didn't come out of his body. It doesn't. It's not an extension of his body. Is that what you're saying? It was more of just.
To me, it was like very weak. It was like a snap of his finger, and then they were being incinerated. The way that it was shown, and so like I'm thinking like, if that's the case, then like Aang's gonna get incinerated instantly if it's just by a snap of his finger, and then and it just reminded me of like the Ember Island players episode where like they did Ozai winning the battle. That's what it seems like. I don't think it's obviously going that way, but I'm just telling you like that's how it's being portrayed.
But wouldn't you think that's a good thing? Because one thing that the anime show doesn't do well, which I think it's showing Ozai's power. Right, now they do a good job at making you feel the presence because of he's almost like the Zuko and Azula are like an extension of him. So you're like, man, if these people are afraid of this guy, then this guy must be a badass. But you really don't see him even fight until Day of Black Sun and then the end. So I just feel like in episode 2, having it at the beginning and then having him literally like in seconds incinerate 10 people at once. I think that shows that he's like not a threat. Like, man, this is the Fire Lord. Imagine this, but times 10 because he's gonna have the comet with him. So I didn't have an issue with how they showed that. I think my issue is more of just how they portrayed Azula and just like I kind of just wish that like resistance part was a little bit longer. It seemed like it was like it's like why are we. I don't know. It just seemed a little weird. It seemed off to me.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of the writing in the show so far.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and go with our main 3 characters: Sokka, Katara, and Aang. One thing I gathered from this before we even jump into the Amashu part.
Yeah.
After 2 episodes, I would just straight up say the weakest part of the show, but that's not the writing. The weakest part of the show is Aang. Like.
I thought the weakest part was dialogue.
No. But it's like if you take away the dialogue, like just think about the actors and just the story itself and kind of what is going on. It's just the plot. Like, don't think too much about the dialogue because dialogue's so spotty everywhere. I think the weakest part of this is that as a casual show, like just watching it, trying to have new eyes, think as if I'd never watched Avatar before, I would be like, the weakest part of the show so far is the main character, Aang. Like, there's just something about, I'm not trying to, like, be too harsh on this kid, but, like, he just doesn't do it for me. Like, this episode, Katara did really well, and I think some of the newer characters they introduced did really well. I think, again, the guy that's portraying Sokka has done well. I even have no issues with what they're doing with Azula when it comes to the acting. I don't know where they're going with it. I'm not in love with some of the things I've seen so far. But Zuko, like again, some of the story stuff is whatever, but I'm trying to act as if I've never seen this show before. I would say the main character Aang is just not doing it for me.
That's a
Just
fair critique.
I don't know. So, but I just had to say that before we really get into it. That's probably
Okay.
one of my biggest things. So let's start. They go to Amashu. This what looks like some type of merchant / maybe like a farmer helps the three get in to Amashu. Now, one thing they did say that made me very intrigued was, and they're just completely changing things around. But they were like, they essentially said that Ba Sing Se is a hub for all these different things like technology and all these different things, which does make sense. The Mechanist is the one that created the slides, or he's the one that thought of the slides. And I wrote down here, episode 1 was, we agreed 4 episodes combined. Boy in the Iceberg, Avatar Returns, Southern Air Temple, and The Storm, which makes sense, right? Intro to the characters, the first 3 episodes. Episode 2 was a combination of the Waterbending Scroll, Warriors of Kyoshi, and a little bit of Avatar Roku. I forgot what it. Part 2 of the Spirit World.
Winter Solstice Part 2.
Yes. This episode had Omashu, Jet, the Northern Air Temple, right? And so they basically were like, let's take the main spots they all went to and act like it was one spot. So I know that's a lot I just threw at you, but what is your like first kind of thought of them putting everything into one city?
It was just different. I mean, I just wasn't. I think this is just what we're going to be expecting from now on. Mm-hmm. Is just this conglomerate of like one episode being like 3 episodes into one, and they're going to be random episodes. Mm-hmm. So I'm reserving judgment a little bit, but at the same time, especially the Mechanist, like the Northern Air Temple, if they don't show it, like it's important for world building. It's the whole aspect of like going around from town to town, city to city, place to place is all part of the world building. So you get to know the world of Avatar mm-hmm. as much as you can. And so I didn't particularly like it. And I was like, his name is Sai. He was just called the Mechanist in the OG anime. Like they give him a name.
Maybe he had a name. They always called him the Mechanist, though. Yeah.
Like, of course, he probably did have a name, but like in the show, they just called him the Mechanist. They never said Sai, and it was just like, who's this from? Like Duck Dynasty, like Uncle Sai, like. And so, like, and I think Teo was interesting. I think he played the part pretty well for the most part. And when you learn about Jet, I had a feeling it was him before him revealing himself. But I didn't particularly like. I didn't particularly like how they made him out, what they made him out to be, because in the live action, they made him out to be early on, probably like a redeemable character already. From what I was getting at, mm-hmm. and then in the original, you could just tell he was like a better word, like a douche, like early on, mm-hmm. like always, like you could tell there's something hidden underneath that persona that he was giving off, and I just did not get that here. But they also wanted to kill the Mechanist with the plastic jelly.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm okay with them combining certain things, but it's like the way they did it. Because I'm not gonna lie, watching the episode, it was actually constructed into an interesting, good episode. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, okay, they're combining certain things, but even when they went up to the cave, like, let's go up to this cave, and they're like blasting jelly, and I was thinking in my head, I was like, oh, okay, I guess they're gonna have this. These people have blasting jelly, but like Jet's kind of known for the blasting jelly, but I guess it's just gonna be these, fire bending spies, and then he's like, he finds these things. He's like, I think I know what's behind it. And it cuts to Jet. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. Like, Jet is the one that's almost. Jet is taking down like things in this town and destroying places in this town which might kill innocent people because he knows there's Fire Nation spies and stuff like that. Like, I was actually like, that to me was an interesting way of spinning it and making it different than what it was before, which is just Jet is trying to, there's Fire Nation colonies, and he's trying to take down these colonies, but within the colonies there are also earthbenders, and because they have taken over villages of earthbenders, and some of the earthbenders might just die because of it. So it's an interesting spin of how he does it. But the problem I kept running into is that when you're taking a bunch of things and putting it into a Mashu, you change what a Mashu is. And so the town of Amashu and that whole city that we watched was not Amashu. It had aspects like the wall that opens at the beginning, and a king, and which they mention that he is an old king that doesn't know what he's doing. Now, that could just be a persona. We don't know yet. That could be their way of being like, oh, no, he's actually this badass when Aang actually fights him. But they very much change what Omashu even is. Now, I have the fear, because this does lead into almost like a part 2. Like, they stay in Omashu. They have not even met Bumi yet. My fear is that Bumi will actually not be his friend. That is my fear. And I'm a huge Bumi guy. Like, he's nowhere near the end of my, he's nowhere near the top of my list of my favorite characters. I like him. I don't have any issues with him, but he's a decent character, right? You see him 3 or 4 times in the show. But I do feel like the connection of him and Aang, and him being a friend of Aang's before the iceberg, and you find out at the end of the episode, that is a great little concept. And I just feel like they might not do it. I'm not going to judge anything yet. We'll see. I just feel like I just feel like they might not do that. So, but yeah, overall, I like the Jets. I like the Freedom Fighters. I like that this was probably the first time where we had well, maybe not. They did it a little bit in episode 2, but they had Katara basically have her own side story, which is fine. Like, go away. And so we had 2 stories going on. You had the Mechanists and Sokka and Aang, and then you had Katara with Jet. I actually didn't mind that because it's a way for them to break down essentially 2 episodes of Avatar the Last Airbender anime into 1 episode. They just separate them for a little bit. So I was kind of cool with that. Again, it's just like an interesting story, but you're taking characters and you're changing what those characters' fundamental themes were of the show. Like, I think Jet very much had a theme of we need to do good, but at what cost? So I mean, when it comes to all of that, I mean, I know you can kind of explain some of it, but do you have any additional thoughts before we move on with all these different characters?
Sure. So I thought Omashu was, the way that they depicted it was not good. And the CGI, good, but in terms of what was inside, no. I got a lot of Bossing Say vibes, like where refugees come in, and they didn't depict that in the anime. It was like because Sokka said Omashu's the last big Earth Kingdom stronghold left. Like, that's where the earthbend, a lot of earthbending culture is still intact. That's just what it made it out to be. And so this made it more of a Bossing Say vibe. I agree with you with the Freedom Fighters. I liked that scene pretty well when they were fighting the Fire Nation spies, especially with the Duke going, "Hey, buddy, thwack."
I like how Katara went. I like how Katara said, "Thanks, Pipsqueak," and he's like, "Actually, I'm Pipsqueak. That's the Duke." Like I was like, "All right, that's pretty funny." Like that was a good way of doing it.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned with what they're going to make. I mean, you and I have talked about this before about how they're going to make Boomy. I'm very concerned,
Mm-hmm.
and I think your prediction of him not being Aang's friend is a very real possibility.
Right.
One thing I really did appreciate with this episode, and just for starters, I actually thought this is the best episode so far. Actually, but like overall, even with my issues with it, the interaction between Sokka and the Mechanist of like Sokka, like you're a good engineer. I really liked that because the anime showed it, they put it into action, but no one gave Sokka like the wisdom of like you're not just a fighter, you can also be an engineer. And the anime showed that several times in season 1, throughout the whole show. But I just really appreciated the wisdom the Mechanist Sai said to Sokka, and saying like he can be more than just a warrior, essentially.
Right.
And I thought that was important.
Yeah, I think they did. Again, these are one of those things where it's like you slowly see Sokka do things in season 1 and in season 2, where it's like the more and more he shows it, the more and more you're like, oh, Sokka does. Not only is he a decent leader, but like he does know things. You know, from like season 1, it was like I have an instinct, and they made like a joke about it. But then also like when he made the plan with Aang on the imprisoned episode, like you can tell like he makes plans. He has just like the skill of like adapting to his environment, making plans, doing things like when he works with the Mechanist to make the airship fly better. You know, like certain things where it's like he has that in him, and he just thinks with his feet, and he has the capability of doing that. And they show it a little bit more in a fast. They don't do it as subtle. They do it like they quickly tell you like this guy, he's a really good engineer, because in episode 3 they kind of like let the Mechanist tell the audience by telling Sokka like you're a very good engineer, you know your stuff, which is fine. One thing go ahead.
I was gonna say like real quick, the I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I want to know your thoughts on if you thought Sokka should have saved the day in this episode, or do you think it was right for Katara to do so?
It's tough because
I'll just add just real quick that because like obviously in the Jet episode, Sokka saved the day, and and I think that's obviously important for Sokka's character development, and like it reverts back to him being that hero compared to in the beginning of the Jet episode. So I just want to know what your thoughts.
Well, it's interesting because we haven't seen part 2 yet, so it might be an interesting concept of being like Katara saves the day, but so does Sokka, because they're both wrong about like Katara was saying the Mechanist is a certain way, and Sokka was saying that Jet's wrong and he's a certain way. And then maybe they both saved the day crossing each other. So like she seemed like she saved the day in the sense of she saved Sokka's person. But maybe something will happen to Jet. Well, Sokka like decides, you know what, Jet is trying to do the right thing. And maybe he helps Jet escape or something like that. Like we don't know because this kind of moves as a part 1 and part 2. I will say I'm okay with how they did it with Katara. It shows that Katara, I'm okay with like Jet telling her like about the emotion part and kind of letting her like learn the water whip in that way. You're gradually seeing Katara get better. So now we're going to be entering episode 4 and episode 5. And I feel like towards the middle of the season, you're going to be like, wow, okay, Katara's getting better as a bender. It's naturally coming to her now. And then when we go to the finale and she meets a master, she is able to really enhance her ability. So I'm okay with how they showed her kind of saving the day. I will say one thing they did multiple times in this episode is they treated the audience like we were children, which I get it. It's a children's show,
Yeah.
but based off a children's show. But like, just look, he's with a spy, and the firebender's spy just goes like this with fire randomly, and you're like, why did they do that? Was it just to show the audience that he's a firebender? You know, later on when they switch briefcases kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then they just show one of the briefcases just soaking in plastic jelly. And it's like, we know that has plastic jelly in it. You don't need to tell us that. Like, just certain things where they're like almost hold-handing us because they think that we're dumb, because they think that we're 8-year-old kids. And it's like the majority of people watching this are like in their late teens, 20s, and 30s. Like, they're the original anime. Don't treat this show like it is a children's show, but live action. Treat this show like you're watching Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, that Lord of the Rings, because like, does it have some childlike, like the original Hobbit was supposed to be a children's book. So does it have some childlike themes and like things that Harry Potter is kind of for kids and teens, but it is adult themed. Like, they don't do certain things in Harry Potter where you're like, we get it. Like, this person's like, they treat their audience like they're adults.
Right.
That's what they need to do with this live action. And I feel like they have very much treated the audience at times like children. And I'm like, I get it. Like, you don't have to spoon, give me a spoonful of what you're trying to give me. Just show it and I'll understand. Again, I guess you could say small things, but it is an overarching thing I've seen couple times, and in this episode they do it like 4 or 5 different times. Like, when I saw this by talking to him and went with fire, I was like, why did he need to do that? Like, we know he's wearing red. Like, you can know, like, okay, that's a good way of doing it. Also, something I had kind of a little nitpick, and I'll pass it to you again. Just like the fact that Zuko and Iroh got into this town so easily, it's like, what makes the Fire Nation not come here and just burn the whole place to the ground? Like, how did Zuko and Iroh get in this town so easily to the point where they could have just been in there and lived in there, and they could have brought in one Fire Nation soldier in every couple of days to the point where they have 10 soldiers, 20 soldiers, and then burn the whole place to the ground? Like, Iroh, Zuko getting to the town, and trying to find and eventually finding Aang in the game.
Yeah, you cut out for about 15 seconds.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. The negatives I have about that arc with Zuko is that Zuko and Iroh were able to get into this town so easily, to the point where it's like, this is supposed to be kind of a town that is hard to get in. Hence why when Aang does get in there and then wreaks some havoc in the anime, they capture him as a prisoner, and it's like, it just seemed very easy for 2 Fire Nation soldiers, not only soldiers, but like Fire Nation royal family, to just easily get into this town. So what did you think about that? And then also, what did you think about just whole Iroh and Zuko kind of arc up until they find Aang?
Well, before we go into that, I was surprised. I was like, the first time Avatar used a swear word when the Mechanist was like, damn. And I was like,
oh, did they? I didn't even
notice that.
No.
Yeah, they
no,
like,
fine. I mean, yeah.
But it's like, oh my gosh, their first swear word.
That's funny.
But yeah, anyway, more importantly though, we see a very important character who we pay homage to on this podcast, on this episode.
Yes, yeah, we forgot about that. Yes. The cabbage merchant had made his appearance.
And what did you
did a little bit different.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what did you think?
It's funny. I mean, the first time you see him, he I think he's about to say it, but then he doesn't, or he's like, "Oh my gosh, my!" And then the scene ends, and then you finally see his cabbage thing go on fire, and that's when he yells it. I mean, it was a fun scene. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah.
I like how they did it, like through a visual, and he looks up, and it's like he's looking at the camera, and he's like, "My cabbages," and it goes to the next scene. It was fun. That was a cool little. I always look at those 2 episodes as if it's throwaway episodes, because I'm like, first time he goes there, it's some character development to like you learn stuff, and it's really the first time you see Aang in action doing tasks. You know, I mean, besides going against Zuko and helping his friends, but like, you know, he's actually like doing stuff. He's going against an Earthbender. I think in the show, it's the first time we see an Earthbender in the anime. So like that's kind of all cool. But I always kind of look back and I'm like, when I think of my top 61 episodes of Avatar, I'm like, those 2 Amashu episodes are just like meh to me. Like they're not anything great. Neither of them really move the story forward in the sense of like real big plot points. So you disagree? I don't.
Oh, hands. The second Omashu, you get Azula meets the gang for the first time.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
And the first one, I mean, it revolves all the way back to world building.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just mentioned it. It's the first time you see an earth bending. Mm-hmm. You see an earth bending city, like a big one.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's world building. I agree with that.
But I will also agree with you that obviously out of the 61 episodes, like you don't really pay any like attention to it. But every episode's important because it's the greatest show of all time. So
yeah, well, I mean, don't get me wrong. He does do certain things, right? It gives Aang the sense that he has a friend from the old times. It shows Aang fight an Earthbender. Boomy does talk about the comet and that he has to make sense of it, and he has to get learn all 4 elements and from the Fire Lord, and you know, like they do. And then obviously the second time they go there, it's very important because Aang thinks Boomy's going to be his teacher, and Boomy's like, no, you have to find someone else, but that person has to be someone that is patient, waits, listens, and then obviously that all leads to Toph. But going back to the original episode, or this episode, I should say. What are your thoughts with just what they did with Iroh, Zuko getting into the city, running into the really Aang, Zuko and Aang fighting each other, having that little fight sequence, and then what looks like Iroh is going to be getting caught by the Earthbenders, kind of sacrifices himself so that Zuko can get away. What did you think about all of that? All the Zuko Iroh stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it mixes your feelings. It just does for me. Mm-hmm. Like there's aspects to where I like it and I dislike it. I like it in the sense of like you get a better sense of Iroh's character, of like him loving Zuko, and you know, willing to sacrifice himself, to give himself up to the Earthbenders.
Traditional love.
Yeah. It goes back to that. Even though it might not be like right in your face about it, you can just tell. Mm-hmm. And so I did like that. But having like Zhao I have friends in high places in Omashu, and like this is how we get in, and I'm like,
oh, right.
I just think that makes more sense, and like again, bossing say, but now they're like, it's both cities now are like the same. At least that's what it makes it out to be. And so, well, but in terms of this plot, it makes sense why they did it, because it makes sense that like of course there'd be informants that get in like untraced. So I overall did like it, and I don't know if I'm like going ahead, but I really thought the Zuko gang fight scene was like Rush Hour choreography. We got a lot of Rush Hour vibes from that fight scene. Well, I literally wrote down in my notes, literally Rush Hour choreography.
Well, it's funny because, so real quickly, I agree with almost everything you said there. I actually completely forgot that Zhao told him I have guys in the inside that can get you in. So that kind of makes sense for how he gets in, even though it's like, if you had guys in the inside, then why? Again, the idea of like these Fire Nation spies, like the town doesn't seem that big. Like you don't think 10 guys, 15 guys at night can burn the whole place to the ground? Like it just seems like kind of, you know what I mean? But going back to that, I just, I just can't, in my mind, cannot get through this concept that Zhao and Zuko are working together, but Zhao's also in cahoots with now Azula
Mhm.
and the Fire Lord. There's just too much going on when it comes to like people are in cahoots with different people. I just wish they stuck with the original, which was Zhao and Zuko almost racing to get Aang. You know,
Right.
Zhao wants obviously what they seem like Zuko wants in this show, which is like Zhao in the original show wants the respect, but also like he wants to be promoted. He wants to essentially have a higher rank. You know, he wants to be the one that catches the Avatar because of the power. Zuko wants it because of his father's respect, and they have different reasons. And this is just it very much seems like they're working together. There's just too much going on. But during that fight sequence, the whole time I was thinking, I'm like, Zuko can't firebend because he doesn't want earthbenders. He doesn't want the place to know.
Right.
Fine. Why doesn't Aang just blast him across the room and run? like Aang's fighting hand-to-hand combat, though. Like, Aang, you can airbend. Like, who cares? Get out of there. Even if the earthbenders know you're the Avatar, like, would you rather get captured or airbend and earthbenders now know that you're the Avatar and you're there and it's like they're gonna kick you out?
Right.
They might brace you. Who knows, really?
Right.
It's just like it was just a very odd thing for me where it's like the original show, it made sense to why Aang was trying to hide because they didn't want too many people knowing they're the Avatar at first. And so it kind of made sense, I guess. And again, we were like episode 4, episode 5. Like this was only like the second or third place they went to. So that it made sense. This one just when he's getting attacked by Zuko in the city, it just would have made way more sense if I was Aang to be like, I already showed I can fly. I'm getting out of here. like you know what I mean?
Who needs my glider when I have myself?
They showed that already. In this, they changed it around. Like Aang, episode 1, Aang was like flying around. You saw him, and
he
it's
was
like
Superman.
yeah, it's like we wouldn't even talk about that how they did that, but I just what makes you from jumping onto that roof right now, just getting away from Zuko? It's like you're playing like pansy with him in this fucking little like this little merchant area with like using this like cloth. I'm like, what is happening? So that fight sequence was like it reminded me of Rush Hour. It was a very interesting fight sequence, and I didn't mind it. But the whole time I was just thinking like this seems like something that would be in Shang-Chi 2, not like Avatar the Last Airbender. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you have the elements of air. Get out of there. But yeah, so yeah, another thing that speaking of the merchant, like the kind of the area, they showed the White Lotus tile, which was very interesting. Again, more of the like waterbending scroll merchanty area. Like they're making it very like they're making a lot of these areas very like a lot of like lived in. Like the idea of like people live there, trade like the trading aspect, the merchant aspect. And I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with every town they go to having those aspects. I'm sure Ba Sing Se in the anime was like that as well, from my recollect. So talk about a lot of things here. Let's just go ahead real quickly and kind of go backwards a little bit. There was a sequence between Katara and Sokka that they were like shouting at each other in the room because again, Jet has this mindset, being like a freedom fighter and helping the town. There's 2 characters in this, which I kind of just realizing they're trying to help the town for 2 different reasons. You know, you have the Mechanist who's trying to help the town with the technology, but which I think we'll find out later, he is giving some of that information to the fire bending spies to essentially save the town, because it's like, and maybe that's why the firebenders aren't tearing place to the ground. You have 10, 15, 20 spies, and these spies aren't burning down the town because this one man is giving them some technology, and he's essentially saving the town without the town knowing, which is interesting to looking at it. Jet is the opposite, but doing kind of the same thing. He's trying to help people, but he's destroying property and hurting innocent people by trying to catch these spies. So it's a very interesting way of looking at 2 different sides of it. two good people doing bad things to try to do a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And does a good. That is a good way of doing it. But the two siblings fighting, yelling at each other, and kind of, what did you think of that whole scene?
I actually liked it. It was good acting. I really liked. This was the first real sense I got of like Katara, like her like the actress playing Katara is doing a good job.
Okay.
Like a really good job.
Mhm.
Not that she wasn't doing a good one before, but just like this was noticeable for me. And same with Sokka. It made sense because in the cartoon, like Katara and Sokka butted heads all the time, especially in season 1.
I
And
hate to say it, but the time that they butt heads the most, where it was a theme throughout the whole episode, is the Great Divide.
it's true. Yeah. Yeah. That was the episode, one of the main episodes I was thinking about. So,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was good. I thought that, like, Katara leaving and then coming back relatively quickly was a little bit cheesy. Do you remember like she left? Yeah, she left, found out that, oh my gosh, Jet's doing this, and then came back like relatively immediate. I thought that was like a little bit cheesy.
I would have liked the episode. Again, it's a two-parter, but it seems like it's gonna be a two-parter because they're in Amashu. But I would have liked the episode. This whole series feels everything kind of seems like it's like, all right, we gotta hit points. Let's go.
Yeah.
I would have, even though Katara was with Jet and they talked about her mother a little bit, had her touching the necklace. You got the mother stuff. But I just wish that they were able to breathe a little bit. I wish that she was with Jet maybe for another 10 minutes of screen time. Like they could have maybe done it, because in the show they do a task and say that. So maybe he does say something along the lines of like, Katara feels heartbroken because she kind of likes this guy Jet, and she feels like he uses her in the show. I would have liked that too. Like, hey, I need you. You're a waterbender. And he lies and he says something, but really it's just him trying to get water because he's going to use the water to do something to kill the Mechanist, and is like, and she feels used by Jet. And she's like, wow, dude, like I thought you were actually cool. And he's like, no, I do care about you. I do, but I needed you. And I had to like almost trick you into that. Because I do feel the sense that Jet and we find out later, it's a redemption arc. Mm-hmm. Jet, he's a douchebag, like you said, but he is a genuinely good person. Like anyone in this war, it's hard for us to judge. It's like you're trying to do a good thing, and you know that there has to be sacrifices, and you have to do what you need to do to get by. And there's always that question of like, would you save, the whole ethical part stuff, like to save someone you love, would you allow 5 people to die? Stuff like that. And that's things that Avatar, the anime, bring up a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's why a lot of people love it more than just a cartoon. And I wish it was something kind of like that. And it's like he tricks Katara into doing something because he wants to save specific people or the town, and she just feels used. So by skipping all of that, it's like, I just feel like it's like, dude, you just met this guy like 18 minutes ago. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Right. So it's like that. Again, it moves through it real quick. I understand why, but they move that real quick. So yeah, it is what it is. I just wish that's kind of the route they went. I wish they just took 10 more minutes in this episode and allowed both these characters to. They did it a lot with the Mechanist, right? But they didn't do it as much with Jet and Katara. I wish they allowed it to breathe a little bit more. So I mean, you want to jump in on anything bad? You have anything to say about that before we move on to the last kind of part of this?
I'm kind of I don't necessarily see the need for it. The extra 10 minutes, just
okay.
I thought the episode was fine the way it was. It didn't need any additional time for anything. But I actually had a question because it didn't make sense to me whenever I was seeing it. But like Jet's freedom fighting treehouse area. Where was that in Omashu? Like, I never really followed that.
I get the sense that it was not in Omashu. Like they escaped Omashu, and it was like maybe just the forest below or something. That's why I got the sense of that.
There's no forest in Omashu though.
No. Like Omashu is the town on a mountain. So I just assumed that where he was at was in a forest, like leaning out of Omashu, like below Omashu, or maybe like, I don't know. Maybe it was. Isn't
that pretty bad explaining though?
No, it is because you don't get the sense that they left the town, and then how did she get back into the town? Because they made a big deal about them sneaking into the town. So yeah, I mean, all of that is again world building that Avatar the Last Airbender does so well that this show is not doing as well because they're trying to put things together. And like again, it's just one of those things where it's like these are towns and locations that are actually places on the map in Avatar that you could be like, that is where like Omashu is.
Mm-hmm.
Next to Omashu is the Lover Cave. Next to that is this, and it's like I think it's called. It's not Cave Two Lovers. I think it's called the Lover Cave or Lover's Cave. I think it's called Lover's Cave.
No, it's called the Cave of Two Lovers.
I don't know, man. I think it's called Lover's Cave.
Well, it's a labyrinth. It's a labyrinth, but
we'll look it up later. But I think it's called Lover's Cave, and the episode's called the Cave of Two Lovers. Anyway, yeah, I mean, these are all places on the map, and at the end of the day, like when they're changing things around and combining things, it's making it so the world building is a little bit less. The world seems a little smaller.
Yep.
And now some things aren't making sense. You're like, because I didn't even think about that. And you're like, wait a minute. Well, where's the forest in Omashu? And if so, then there's a forest near Omashu. Fine. But at the beginning of the episode, they made a big deal about sneaking into this place. So if a bunch of kids are sneaking into this place every day, then why are the Fire Nation not able to do it? And it's just like things are just adding up in your head where it's like things aren't making sense. And unfortunately, if episode 4 is in Omashu, and it seems like they're going to get to the northern water tribe by like episode 6, 7, maybe.
Probably 7.
8 episodes, so 7. Then because I think episode 6 is called episode 6 or 7 is called the North. So I mean, let's just say episode 7. Like that means we only got 2 more episodes to see the rest of this world in season 1.
Yeah.
Where obviously you're going to see more of it in season 2 and season 3, but like there's just other things that they are just going to miss out on.
Right.
It is what it is. But so, all right, well, that's, episode kind of ends with Katara using the water whip, which we've already talked about.
Yep.
Iroh kind of semi-sacrificing himself so Zuko can get out of there. I'm assuming Zuko and he's going to save Iroh in the next episode, which is going to be, very, very much an homage or whatever you could say. So when he saves him in the Spirit episode, the Winter Solstice episode.
Yep. Let's hope Roku comes in.
Cool. Hopefully Roku comes in. Yeah. So I'm okay with where they're at now. I kind of agree with you. I think this is probably the best episode they've had.
Yeah.
Certain things are coming together where it's like, okay, they're mixing things, putting things together. Cool. But this seemed like it was the best. I don't know anything about Avatar the Last Airbender. I'm going to sit down and watch the show. This seemed like it was the best episode when it came to just being an episode of a TV show I'm sitting down and watching.
I agree.
Now, I know the characters, I know all of this. This is the best constructed episode.
I couldn't have said any better.
What's your rating?
For the episode? Mm-hmm. This is going to be the highest one. Probably like a 2.75.
So you still didn't like it? You still just didn't like you just didn't like it.
Just because there are aspects that I just can't get behind that I'll hold on to with when we went over it in the beginning. Whether it be like you're missing out on world building in the Northern Air Temple with the Mechanist being in Omashu with Jet being in Omashu, it just doesn't flow with me. But and then also just like not explaining where the treehouse is. But again, it's the dialogue was better here. So that bumped it up. for me, and so that's it. The episode flowed really well,
Right.
And so that's why it got pushed up to, instead of like a 2.75.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely, I mean, like, if you take away the idea of, okay, I'm trying to look at it in new lenses. I think probably sitting down, we watched the first 2 episodes, and I'm sitting down with like new pair of eyes. I was being like, you know what? I'm not gonna try and compare. So understanding, like, okay, they're gonna have the Mechanist, Jet, all in Mashu. Like, it's funny because when I first saw Jet, I actually thought it was the actor that was gonna be Haru. I thought that was gonna be Haru. I didn't think of him as Jet for some reason. I just didn't.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think Jet was going to be in this episode. So it was kind of like when I saw Jet, I was like, oh, okay, it's Jet. And then you find out he's behind the blasting jelly. So, like, I think constructed, like you said, it was a decently constructed episode. I mean, the acting and the dialogue was way better.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of new characters that, again, it's like, they have little time to shine, but we know these characters are coming back, so I'm okay with them introducing these characters all kind of at the same time. I had fun with it. I mean, I think that I wrote this down. The scene where they were jumping on the slides going up, I thought that was really good. They're done really well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I actually like this episode. I would give this episode. I think I gave episode 1 a 3.5. I gave episode 2 a 1.75, I believe, and then I would give this episode a 3.25. I still think my favorite episode is episode 1.
Interesting. Okay.
It's like neck and neck. I still think it's episode 1 just because episode 1, it didn't try too many things new. So it was very much the numbers of what we know of Avatar the Last Airbender 1, 2, and 3,
Right.
and then had some backstories in it. And I think it did well doing that. I still can't get behind in this episode. I still can't get behind some of the hand holding, some of the like again, it's one of the things where when he was flying, when Teo had his little. And he was fine. It was just fine. The girl was like, is he flying? And I was like, wait, this kid lives in this town. Like, you don't see this kid every freaking day flying around? This isn't a new concept. Like, this kid's had this little glider, this whole, you know what I mean? Like certain things that they did that like bugged me, almost worse than writing. Because it's like, if there's bad dialogue, I can almost get it because it's like, these are kids. This is a lot of stuff. You're changing concepts. Like, I can understand certain dialogues being bad and then just moving on from them being like, wow, grand, that was horrible dialogue. We'll move on from that scene. But when it's like you're acting like I'm an idiot and you're like, I'm like they switched them. One of them has blasting jelly in it. Maybe it's the briefcase dripping the blasting jelly. It's like, come on, man. Like, really? Like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Like, those small things, I think if those things weren't happening and they made the Jet stuff a little longer to the point where, like, I could really feel that Katara was actually really hurt by what Jet does. And it's not like, oh, wow, this is a guy that you were with for, like, maybe 7 minutes.
Right.
I feel like it could be probably closer to a 3.75. I would probably make episode 1 3.25 as well. Like, this is right neck and neck with episode 1, in my opinion, just for different reasons.
Yeah.
We went for about an hour ranting about this episode.
I told you, I was like, I told Matt before we were recording, I was like, this is going to be a long one.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's just so much to dissect.
There was a lot of good in this episode, but there were just certain things that I was just, like, again, the Jackie Chan fight that you were that is actually, because in my opinion, that little fight sequence was probably the worst fight sequences we probably have seen this entire series so far.
Yeah,
like, that was a bad.
I was laughing. I was
laughing, but it was like kind of like what you said. Like, I was laughing at the cheesiness, and it was done like, again, the core. Like, it was done well, but just it doesn't make sense to what we're watching. Like, it's like. It's like, you mean you've been looking for this guy for 3 years? He is the Avatar, and you're just gonna obey the rules of this town because you don't want to get caught? Like, no, right. F that. Go get him. Like, I don't know, man. Like,
one thing that I did want to see, and I might be nitpicking, and you can call me out on it, but one thing I wanted to see with the hand-to-hand combat fight scene
Uh-huh.
is you see that in the cartoon, but Aang dodges. Like, I wanted to see the dodging of like getting behind him and Zuko like not even like
Yes.
touching him.
Yes.
I really wanted to see that, and they didn't. Like, Aang got hurt. Like, Zuko actually like hit Aang. I'm like, that's not what. That's
No.
not.
No. Yes. Yes. 100%. Like Aang. Season 1, Aang bodied Zuko every time. It was like Zuko's like, finally, I found you, and he's just like, woo, and Zuko just flies out the room. He's like, all right, next. It was like you always felt bad for Zuko. You were like, man,
Right.
Zuko, you try so damn hard, and every time it just doesn't work out, buddy.
Right.
You know. And this,
Right.
it's like, man, like Zuko is stronger than Aang,
Right.
and he's not even bending.
No.
You know, and you're like, okay. So we'll see. It's just that is something I noticed too. But all right, guys. Well, what are your thoughts?
Yep.
About episode 3? Do you feel like the writers are treating us like idiots? Are there any things that stood out to you that you liked or didn't like about this episode? There was a lot going on in this episode, more than anything. Like, there was more going on in this episode than we've had in any episode. There's a lot going on in this episode. Different themes, different characters. What changes did you like? Are there any nitpicks that you have? Do you not like the fact that they're hand-holding you throughout this journey? Let us know below.
And please subscribe.
And please subscribe. Be a cabbage.
Be a cabbage.
Don't be a cabbage. Be a cabbage crew.
That's right. Be part of this journey with us. Come on.
See ya.
See ya, cabbage crew.